On October 27, 1943, at 10:30 a.m. New Zealand infantry forces landed on Mono Island in the Treasury Islands. Among those who touched shore first were members of Company A from the 87th Naval Construction Battalion, accompanied by a 25-man detachment from Battalion headquarters. They arrived with equipment that revolutionized Pacific Island warfare. This included 8 Caterpillar D bulldozers, heavy-tracked machines weighing about 20 tons each and fitted with 10-foot steel blades for earth-moving and clearing vegetation to construct roads. These machines were painted olive drab and had been manufactured in Peoria, Illinois, and San Leandro, California. They were transported nearly 7,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean to an obscure tropical island that was unfamiliar territory to most Americans. Once on shore, the bulldozers began operating almost immediately. The diesel exhaust mixed with salt spray and humidity created a unique atmosphere in which the sounds of heavy machinery could be heard echoing through terrain previously filled only with jungle noises. Retreating Japanese defenders inland were now aware of these new machines at work. Most had never encountered such equipment on this scale before. Exactly 1 hour after landing, an event occurred that would later become legendary among construction battalions. Machinist Mate Second Class Aurelio Tason from Milford, Massachusetts, was operating his bulldozer when Lieutenant Charles Turnbull informed him of a Japanese pillbox blocking the advance. Constructed with coconut logs and sand, the standard defensive structure featured a machine gun covering the beach area where Allied troops were pinned down. The offensive had come to a halt. Aurelio Tason made a critical decision. He lifted his bulldozer blade and used it as a shield from enemy gunfire, skillfully maneuvering around the fortification to approach from behind, and then charged straight ahead. Bullets clattered against the sturdy steel blade. Lieutenant Turnbull provided cover with his carbine. Once Tason reached the enemy position, he lowered the blade and crushed the entire structure, burying it along with its 12 Japanese occupants beneath tons of logs, sand, and coral. The operation was swift. The beach obstacle had been neutralized. The advance resumed. For this act, Tason received the Silver Star Medal and was promoted to Machinist Mate First Class. His heroic deed was featured in military publications, illustrated in comics, and served as inspiration for a pivotal scene in the 1944 film, The Fighting CBS, starring John Wayne. The image of a CB striding his bulldozer while engaging in combat became an iconic symbol of BTO operations. Yet, despite Tason's individual bravery, which was indeed significant, it only represented a tiny part of what bulldozers accomplished during the Pacific War. The real narrative did not revolve around dramatic combat scenes. It centered on mathematics, construction speed, and industrial capacity translated into strategic military advantage. The ability to transform any captured Pacific island into an operational American base before Japanese forces could launch effective counterattacks or defensive measures was crucial. After Tason's assault on the pillbox, the CBS crews continued their work on Treasury Islands without pause. Heavy machinery cleared the jungle to create supply depots. In just a few hours, U.S. troops had set up secure zones for storing ammunition, food, medical supplies, and equipment. Within days, CBS had constructed 21 miles of roads across Mono and Sterling Islands. They also established a PT boat base on Sterling Island and began building an airfield that was initially 600 feet long and 100 feet wide. This included taxiways, hard stands for aircraft parking, and an aviation gasoline storage facility equipped with 5 tanks, each holding 1,000 barrels. The remainder of the 87th Naval Construction Battalion arrived on November 28th to support ongoing construction battalion. Took over in December 48th Naval Construction Battalion. Took over in December, followed by the arrival of the 80th Naval Construction Battalion in January 1944. By then, the airfield had been expanded to a length of 7,000 feet and a width of 300 feet, fully capable of accommodating heavy bombers. In less than 2 months, the Treasury Islands were transformed from dense jungle into a significant forward airbase. This rapid construction timeline marked a pivotal change in Pacific War logistics. American forces could capture an island and quickly make it operational within days or weeks. In contrast, Japanese forces, primarily using manual labor, required several months to complete similar projects. This time difference conferred numerous strategic advantages throughout the campaign. Faster base construction enabled a quicker operational pace for U.S. forces. This rapid tempo gave Japanese garrisons less time to fortify their positions against the next American advance, resulting in weaker defenses and faster victories. These swift successes translated into shorter campaigns with fewer casualties and reduced resource consumption. Each operation intensified this cycle further. The bulldozers played a crucial role in maintaining it. Fleet Admiral William Halsey, who led significant South Pacific operations during the Solomon Islands campaign, recognized their strategic significance. After the war concluded, Halsey was specifically questioned about the weapons that secured victory in the Pacific theater. When asked to prioritize the instruments and machines crucial for winning the war in the Pacific, he ranked them as follows: submarines first, radar second, aircraft third, and bulldozers fourth. Halsey placed construction equipment above battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and every other surface combat vessel. He deemed bulldozers to be the fourth most important weapon among all those utilized throughout the Pacific campaign. This ranking came from an admiral who commanded carrier task forces, directed naval engagements, and oversaw amphibious assaults from Guadalcanal through the Philippines to attacks on the Japanese home islands. Halsey witnessed CB construction battalions operate consistently under combat conditions. He comprehended that America's capacity to construct infrastructure more rapidly than Japan could destroy it provided a decisive strategic advantage. The Caterpillar D8 was extensively used during Pacific operations and came in various models throughout the war years. The 1H series, manufactured from 1935 through 1941, featured a Procell Caterpillar D13000 engine with Untold 10 horsepower. Approximately 8,000 of this model were produced before military requirements altered production priorities. Upon America's entry into the war, Caterpillar shifted to producing the 8R series exclusively for military use. The 8R series was a more austere design compared to previous civilian models. Non-essential materials were substituted wherever possible to preserve strategic resources for higher priority military applications. Optional features available on civilian models were eliminated to streamline production and reduce manufacturing time. Despite these cost-cutting measures, the ATR maintained excellent performance characteristics. Caterpillar boosted engine power to 130 horsepower with enhanced fuel injection technology. Its bare op from 1941 through 1945, the company produced around 9,900 units of the 8R series, most of which were deployed for military use. A significant portion served in Pacific theater operations. Post-war, many of these machines entered civilian markets. Resourceful equipment dealers acquired surplus military bulldozers from Pacific Islands and resold them to contractors across the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and other nations. Recognizable by distinctive serial number markings, such as US-7, indicating service with the USF. Navy's 7th Fleet in the Pacific, these machines continue to perform effectively in civilian construction for years after their military decommissioning. Looking ahead to post-war demand, Caterpillar launched the 2U series, which featured notable advancements over wartime models. Engine output was raised to 110 horsepower, and a new 5-speed constant mesh transmission with forward and reverse controls reduced gear changes during work shifts. The introduction of an oil clutch system marked a significant innovation that extended clutch life and enhanced cooling under heavy loads. The operating weight increased to roughly 16 tons. The 2U series became immensely popular in post-war markets, with thousands manufactured throughout the late 1940s. However, the wartime 8R series holds a unique place in history. These olive-drab machines, emblazoned with U.S. military identification markings and operated by Caterpillar's Bureau of Ships, CBS, on tropical Pacific islands under combat conditions, exemplified American industrial prowess translated into operational military capability. They highlighted that modern warfare hinges fundamentally on the capacity for rapid industrial production, logistic support, infrastructure development, and systematic construction outpacing enemy destruction. According to official CBS engineering estimates and post-war construction analyses, a skilled operator could move approximately 300 cubic meters of earth per hour under ideal conditions with one Caterpillar Day 8 bulldozer. This productivity equates to roughly 11,000 cubic feet of material moved in an hour. Employing hand tools and manual labor alone to move that volume of material would necessitate about 300 workers working an entire day. Consequently, the productivity ratio was roughly 300 to 1. An American worker operating a bulldozer could accomplish in just 1 hour what 300 individuals with shovels could achieve over a full day. Although not precise due to variable conditions, it accurately reflected the significant industrial advantage provided by American construction equipment. Japanese forces did not have comparable machinery at their disposal. The Imperial Japanese Navy established construction units known as Setsueidi, which began operations in November 1941. These units were mainly composed of semi-skilled laborers from Korea and Taiwan, supervised by Japanese officers and civilian overseers. Despite these efforts, the Setsueidi never managed to reach even a fraction of the American CB capability. Japanese commanders frequently expected these construction units to complete tasks that required heavy machinery, but such equipment was unavailable. Japan's industrial output prioritized aircraft, ships, and weapons production almost exclusively, leaving little room for construction equipment in resource allocation and manufacturing schedules. All were civilian models often requisitioned from plants. They were poorly maintained, lacked adequate spare parts and replacement capacity, and frequently broke down under continuous wartime use. Historical records and post-war analyses extensively document this disparity. Brute forces proved insufficient when war struck, with a severe shortage of heavy equipment such as bulldozers almost entirely absent. Engineering units in Japan typically included large numbers of labor troops, often Koreans, who held low positions within the military hierarchy. Manpower and physical endurance were frequently substituted for machinery across Japanese construction operations, but this approach consistently failed to meet the necessary outcomes over prolonged periods. Human strength cannot effectively match the efficiency of diesel engines and steel blades over sustained efforts. Japanese construction units working across various Pacific islands relied on manual labor for digging trenches and hauling materials. They cleared dense jungle vegetation using axes and machetes, constructed fortifications piece by piece with sheer physical effort, and made gradual progress due to these methods. In contrast, American CBS teams typically finished similar projects in a fraction of the time. This discrepancy often left Japanese defensive preparations unfinished when faced with imminent American attacks. Numerous examples from different Pacific campaigns highlight this issue. Marines were landing. Despite their efforts, the airfield was barely operational upon capture by the Marines. The 6th Naval Construction Battalion arrived with the Marines and had Henderson Field ready for American fighters within days, even under ongoing Japanese bombardment. This rapid construction amazed Japanese commanders, who had invested considerable time in similar projects without achieving comparable results. On Espiritu Santo, near Guadalcanal, CBS units managed to create a fully functional 6,000-foot airstrip from virgin jungle in just 20 days. The swift completion enabled American aircraft to support operations at Guadalcanal and strike Japanese positions across the Solomon Islands. Meanwhile, construction on Japanese airfields on nearby islands remained incomplete weeks or months later. In the New Georgia Group, specifically Vangunu Island, the 47th Naval Construction Battalion joined Marines landing on June 30, 1943. 1943. Stripped despite challenging terrain including hills and ravines filled with coral, 9 days after the initial landing, the first American aircraft took off from the completed runway. Less than 3 weeks later, by July 18, the airfield was accommodating an entire squadron of fighters along with necessary support facilities. Simultaneously, Japanese forces on New Georgia were struggling to fortify their positions using manual labor techniques, which required significantly more time compared to American methods. Another notable battle took place at Tarawa Atoll in November 1943, during the Gilbert Islands campaign, marking one of the most intense engagements in the Pacific War. American Marines endured nearly 1,000 casualties amid brutal combat to overpower resolute Japanese defenders over 3 days of relentless close-quarters fighting. Remarkably, despite the intensity of the resistance, CB units managed to repair the heavily damaged Japanese airfield and make it operational just 15 hours after the island was secured. This rapid turnaround was incomprehensible to military planners who were accustomed to project timelines measured in weeks or months. On June 15, 1944, American forces invaded Saipan. Marines captured a key airfield, which served as the main Japanese airstrip on the island. By June 19, CBS personnel had already begun their work, even while combat was still raging elsewhere on the island. They filled bomb craters, cleared shrapnel and debris, smoothed and compacted the runway surface, pausing only to fend off Japanese counterattacks when necessary. Within 4 days of capturing the airfield, it was operational again. Less than a week after Marines stormed heavily fortified beaches, American aircraft were already flying missions from Saipan. Just weeks later, B-29 Superfortress bombers based on the island launched strategic strikes against targets in the Philippines and eventually the Japanese home islands. This pattern of swift construction following combat operations was consistently repeated throughout the Pacific Campaign. Each major operation followed a similar fundamental sequence of events and demonstrated comparable construction timelines. For instance, American forces landed on Catalina in the Marshall Islands on January 31, 1944. The assault involved intricate coordination among multiple landing forces across several islands within the atoll. CBS units accompanied the initial waves of troops. Within days of securing key positions, construction battalions had established functional airfield facilities and port operations. Quadriline quickly transformed into a significant fleet anchorage and aviation base, supporting further operations deeper into Japanese-held territory. On Eniwetok Atoll captured in February 1944, CBS once again demonstrated remarkable speed of construction, despite the atoll's remote location and limited existing infrastructure. American construction forces established complete base facilities within weeks. The trend persisted, demonstrating the ability of American forces to project power over extensive distances in the Pacific Ocean. This was largely due to their capacity to swiftly establish the necessary infrastructure for sustained operations. On Guam, combat commenced on July 21, 1944, with the arrival of elements from the 3rd Marine Division and 1st Marine Brigade, alongside the Plate Detachment and Assault Forces. The 25th Naval Construction Battalion and 2nd Special Battalion joined them upon landing. Critical Steering Service (CBS) operations began immediately as supplies and equipment were unloaded directly onto contested beaches while fighting continued inland. Over the course of 3 weeks of intense combat for control of the island, CBS also engaged in construction efforts simultaneously. Once Guam was secured, the pace of development accelerated dramatically. Was rapidly transformed into a major headquarters for the United States Pacific Fleet, a significant air base for B-29 strategic bombers, and the 5th Naval Construction Brigade, activated specifically for Guam's development, oversaw the construction of expansive port facilities at Apra Harbor, extensive road networks, numerous airfield complexes, and comprehensive base infrastructure. 2 complete B-29 bomber airfields, North Field and Northwest Field, were constructed with the assistance of Army Aviation Engineer battalions working alongside Navy CBS units. North Field became operational on February 3, 1945, launching its first B-29 raid against Japan on February 24. The south runway at Northwest Field was completed by June 1, followed by the north runway in July. The scale and speed of construction efforts on Guam were among the most remarkable engineering achievements of the entire Pacific campaign. Meanwhile, on Peleliu, one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War took place from September to November 1944. American casualties were exceptionally high relative to the island's size. Despite prolonged combat against entrenched Japanese defenders operating from elaborate cave systems, construction activities continued under fire. Bulldozers operated amidst ongoing battle conditions, connecting American positions with new road networks and developing airfield facilities. Construction proceeded out of operational necessity, regardless of tactical circumstances. Each island assault showcased a similar pattern of events, highlighting the critical role of rapid infrastructure development in sustaining military operations across vast distances. American naval and air forces secured dominance of the seas and skies through extensive preparatory bombardments. Amphibious units then assaulted well-defended enemy positions. Marines and infantry soldiers seized control of beachheads and pushed inland. Construction battalions, often part of the initial landing waves, immediately initiated infrastructure development projects. Bulldozers cleared obstacles from the beaches. Supply depots were quickly established. Road networks linked the beaches to inland areas. Airfield construction commenced even as combat operations continued. Port facilities were either developed or repaired. Each captured island was methodically transformed into a strategic base supporting further American advances deeper into Japanese-held territory. The Japanese defensive strategy continually adapted in an attempt to counter American strengths, but failed to find effective responses. Initially, they focused on defending the beaches to prevent any American landings from taking place. However, this approach proved futile due to the overwhelming naval and air bombardment that systematically destroyed beach defenses before amphibious forces could arrive. As a result, Japanese commanders shifted their tactics to a defense in-depth strategy, deploying forces inland to impede American advances after successful landings. This too was ineffective as American firepower, mobility, and close air support overwhelmed enemy positions in the interior. By mid-1944, the Japanese increasingly emphasized underground fortifications and extensive tunnel networks. The idea was that if they could not outpace American construction capabilities, perhaps making American victories excessively costly in terms of casualties would undermine political support for continuing the war back home. This strategy led to battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, where Japanese forces primarily fought from underground positions, maximizing American losses for every inch of territory contested. Even these sophisticated underground defenses showed significant limitations when faced with bulldozers and relentless engineering efforts. Once Japanese cave positions were identified through reconnaissance or captured intelligence, bulldozers would seal off the entrances using earth, coral, and debris, neutralizing defensive capabilities without direct assault. During naval bombardments, aerial assaults, artillery strikes, explosive attacks, and flamethrower use, bulldozers swiftly cleared the rubble to keep roads accessible and ensure operational mobility. These machines proved highly adaptable in every tactical scenario they encountered. They constructed supply routes connecting forward positions while also building defensive structures that safeguarded American troops during consolidation phases. Even on heavily fortified islands like Iwo Jima, where Japanese forces under General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had spent months preparing intricate underground defenses consisting of interconnected tunnels and reinforced caves, bulldozers were deployed to establish airfields. The Japanese defenders had meticulously fortified the island with extensive defensive positions over an extended period. Despite intense combat conditions, construction battalion CB bulldozers were brought ashore and operated even under enemy fire, clearing debris, building roads, and preparing airfield facilities. In contrast to the meticulous preparations of the Japanese forces, American bulldozers transformed the captured territories into operational bases with remarkable efficiency. Even amidst fierce fighting, the strategic advantages provided by these machines extended far beyond mere construction speed. The rapid development of forward operating bases allowed American forces to maintain a consistently higher operational tempo throughout their campaigns. With each successful island assault, subsequent operations could be launched more swiftly, reducing the time available for Japanese forces to prepare defenses or reinforce threatened positions. This accelerated pace significantly benefited the Allies as they advanced through 1944 and 1945. The effectiveness of American construction equipment was recognized by some Japanese commanders and intelligence analysts who understood its strategic implications. Post-war analyses, including captured documents and interrogations, revealed that the Japanese were aware of the disparity in industrial capacity between their forces and those of the United States. After the war, Vice Admiral Shigeru Fuku noted that one of the key reasons for Japan's defeat was America's superior construction capabilities. He pointed out that American industrial advantages were particularly evident in their possession of advanced construction equipment, which Japan could neither match nor counter effectively. Similar conclusions were reached by other surviving Japanese officers based on their combat experiences and post-war analyses. Japanese efforts to disable or destroy this machinery yielded only minor tactical successes at best. When the opportunity arose, bulldozers were targeted for destruction. Artillery units aimed their fire at construction sites whenever they could reach them. Commando raids also attempted to strike equipment parks and supply dumps. A few bulldozers were indeed destroyed or damaged through these attacks. For instance, a nighttime raid in Bougainville led to the destruction of 3 bulldozers and the deaths of 2 CB operators before being repelled. On Peleliu, Japanese artillery fire caused damage to several construction machines during prolonged combat operations. However, American forces could quickly replace lost equipment from their vast reserves. They maintained spare parts inventories and had a ready supply of trained replacement operators. The destruction or disabling of individual machines had little impact on the overall pace of construction projects. The core issue facing Japan was the sheer scale of America's industrial production capacity. During World War II, American manufacturers turned out thousands of bulldozers and crawler tractors. Caterpillar Tractor Company alone produced 56,066 units across all models from 1941 to 1945 under contracts worth over $70 million. Production was continuous and prioritized, with other companies like International Harvester adding thousands more machines to the total output. These bulldozers and tractors were shipped across the Pacific Ocean just as reliably as rifles, ammunition, food, medical supplies, and all other war materials. Japan lacked the necessary production capacity for construction equipment during the war. The country's industries operated at full capacity throughout the conflict, focusing primarily on replacing lost aircraft and naval vessels. Consequently, there were no available industrial resources, raw materials, manufacturing capabilities, or skilled labor to allocate towards the mass production of heavy machinery. Even when Japanese strategists recognized the strategic importance of construction equipment, it was impractical to divert these limited resources. Transporting such equipment would have posed insurmountable logistical challenges as well. American submarines relentlessly targeted and decimated Japan's merchant fleet, making it nearly impossible to ship large quantities of bulldozers and other heavy machinery to isolated Pacific outposts by 1944. Moreover, the disruption of supply lines made even theoretical delivery scenarios unfeasible. Naval Construction Battalion (CBs), who operated this equipment, differed significantly from conventional infantry units. These battalions recruited extensively from civilian construction trades across the United States, attracting individuals with extensive professional experience in operating heavy machinery and in various skilled labor roles such as carpentry, welding, mechanics, engineering, and foreman jobs. To secure these experienced workers, age restrictions were waived up to 50 years old, and some men even managed to enlist by understating their ages beyond that limit. This mature workforce brought a wealth of practical experience to military construction tasks. These individuals were not novices or young recruits learning the basics, but seasoned professionals who had worked on major civilian construction projects prior to entering service. They possessed deep knowledge in earth-moving, grading techniques, drainage engineering, road-building fundamentals, and foundation preparation. Upon arrival at Pacific Islands with their equipment, these skilled workers immediately applied their extensive professional expertise under combat conditions. For example, Aurelio Tason, who received a Silver Star for destroying a Japanese pillbox on Treasury Islands at the age of 38, had previously worked in construction before his military service. His bulldozer maneuver during the assault on the Treasury Islands was not a stroke of luck or an unplanned improvisation. It was a demonstration of intelligent application of his professional expertise to address a pressing tactical issue. Tason had a deep understanding of his machine's strengths and weaknesses, allowing him to use the blade effectively for protection. He knew how to navigate challenging terrain under combat conditions with precision. His Silver Star acknowledged both his extraordinary personal bravery and his sophisticated operational proficiency simultaneously. Formal CBS training encompassed both combat readiness instruction and construction skills education in meticulously coordinated programs. Camp Endicott at Davisville, Rhode Island, acted as the primary training hub for CBS units in the Atlantic region, while Camp Peary in Virginia provided additional capacity. Later, Camp Huanam in California was renamed Port Huanam and emerged as a significant Pacific-based center for both training and deployment. These facilities ensured that CBS personnel were well prepared for their dual roles of combat engagement and construction work. Under the guidance of experienced Marine Corps instructors assigned to teaching duties, CBS members learned essential combat skills such as weapons handling, small unit tactics, defensive strategies, perimeter security measures, and standard combat procedures. The training was rigorous and realistic, reflecting the understanding that CBS units would operate in active combat zones where genuine combat capabilities were crucial. In addition to combat instruction, CBS personnel also underwent extensive vocational training in specialized construction trades and equipment operation techniques. Camp Endicott hosted around 45 distinct vocational schools covering a wide range of construction specialties necessary for Pacific operations. These included detailed courses on bulldozer operation and maintenance, road grading methods, airfield construction procedures, pile driving, arc welding, concrete formwork and pouring, steel fabrication, carpentry, plumbing, electrical systems, diesel engine repair, heavy equipment maintenance, surveying, drafting, and numerous other technical skills. Each course often lasted several weeks, providing a thorough and comprehensive education in the required technical areas. The intensity of this training reflected the practical realities of their operational requirements. CBS had to operate on remote Pacific islands with restricted supply chains and minimal outside assistance. They were required to establish fully functional bases by transforming the raw jungle landscape using only the materials and equipment they transported themselves. Maintaining and repairing their own gear in primitive conditions was also part of their responsibilities, along with devising creative solutions for unexpected issues as they arose. Additionally, they needed to protect their worksites from enemy assaults. Training aimed at preparing personnel for these multifaceted and rigorous tasks. The dual nature of their combat and construction missions created distinctive dynamics within naval construction battalions. CBS were structured military units adhering to strict discipline and command hierarchies, yet they also functioned as professional construction companies led by individuals with extensive civilian building experience. Battalion commanders were usually civil engineer corps officers who held engineering degrees and had backgrounds in construction. Company leaders and platoon chiefs frequently possessed years of supervisory expertise from their pre-military careers in the construction industry. This blend of military rigor and civilian craftsmanship produced highly efficient hybrid units. This duality was evident in the casualty statistics and honors earned by CB personnel during wartime operations. CBS experienced losses stemming from both enemy engagements and hazardous construction activities. Combat casualties were inflicted by Japanese attacks on work sites, by CBS engaging as infantry when their positions fell under siege, or while supporting Marine or Army units. Accidents related to equipment mishaps, structural failures, explosions during demolition tasks, drownings during underwater projects, on other inherent risks of large-scale building in harsh conditions, accounted for construction casualties. Overall CB losses throughout World War II included both combat-related and construction-related dangers. While exact figures differed slightly across various historical references, comprehensive studies suggested that roughly 500 CBS members were killed or succumbed to combat injuries during the conflict. Thousands more sustained combat wounds of varying degrees of severity. Construction mishaps and tropical illnesses claimed hundreds of lives and injured thousands more. The collective toll of casualties highlighted the genuine dangers faced by CB personnel from multiple fronts. Decorations awarded during the conflict mirrored both combat bravery and construction accomplishments. Hundreds more earned Bronze Stars for outstanding service under combat conditions, while thousands were awarded Purple Hearts for injuries sustained during missions. Countless others were recognized with commendations and letters of appreciation for their exceptional construction work in extremely challenging circumstances. The award patterns demonstrated that CBS members indeed fought and built concurrently, just as their motto suggested. The nature of the construction work often presented significant dangers, even when there was no direct enemy fire involved. Working heavy machinery in tropical conditions on unfamiliar terrain posed substantial risks. Bulldozers operating on steep inclines could easily overturn, potentially crushing operators inside. Those clearing dense jungle faced hidden obstacles, unstable ground, and unexpected hazards. Construction activities in active combat zones proceeded without the usual civilian safety measures, protocols, or equipment typically employed in peacetime. CB casualties from construction accidents were significant throughout Pacific operations, yet the work persisted unabated because it was strategically essential for advancing the campaign. By the end of World War II, naval construction battalions had completed an astounding array of projects across the Pacific theater. Over 400 bases of varying sizes and capacities were constructed virtually from scratch. These ranged from small forward supply points and PT boat stations to large complexes such as those on Guam and the marinas, which could support entire fleets and air forces. These airfields varied widely in size and complexity, from basic fighter strips carved out of jungle measuring between 3,000 to 4,000 feet long, with compacted coral or steel matting suitable for single-engine fighters and light aircraft, to massive bomber complexes featuring multiple runways up to 8,000 feet long or longer. These complexes included extensive taxiway systems, hundreds of aircraft hardstands, elaborate fuel storage facilities, ammunition bunkers, maintenance hangars, and complete support infrastructure capable of hosting numerous heavy bombers simultaneously. The CBS constructed extensive road networks, spanning thousands of miles across numerous widely dispersed islands. These routes connected coastal areas to inland positions, linked airfields to ports, joined supply depots with combat zones, and provided the vital land transportation infrastructure necessary for sustaining American operations. Constructing roads in tropical Pacific environments presented significant challenges due to heavy seasonal rains that turned inadequate pathways into impassable mud. Adequate drainage, grading, and surfacing were crucial elements in road construction. CBS developed effective road-building techniques through practical experience and professional expertise, resulting in reliable thoroughfares capable of handling military traffic even during adverse weather conditions. In addition to airfields and roads, CBS erected comprehensive port facilities from scratch. Ports necessitated the installation of piers, docks, unloading equipment, storage warehouses, fuel stations, and administrative buildings. Many Pacific islands lacked natural deep-water harbors, leading to the necessity for artificial harbor construction using pontoon barges and floating piers. Employed innovative engineering solutions to dredge channels, construct breakwaters, install navigational aids, and establish functional ports capable of accommodating large cargo vessels and fleet auxiliaries. Additionally, they built extensive fuel storage systems crucial for naval and air operations. Major bases required storage tanks for aviation fuel, gasoline, diesel, bunker oil, and various specialized fuels. Storage capacities at these major installations were measured in millions of gallons, requiring sophisticated piping networks, pumping stations, filtration equipment, and fire protection measures. All this infrastructure had to be rapidly assembled from materials shipped over thousands of miles through contested waters. CBS also constructed medical facilities that saved countless American lives throughout the campaign. These included field hospitals, fleet hospitals, and base hospitals offering emergency surgery, intensive care units, recovery wards, and long-term treatment facilities. The hospital on Guam ultimately expanded to accommodate more than 9,000 beds, treating casualties from battles such as Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and other later war conflicts. The construction of these medical facilities involved specialized requirements beyond typical building needs, including the creation of operating rooms with proper ventilation and lighting systems, sterilization facilities, water purification units, waste disposal mechanisms, and numerous additional technical specifications. Radio, telegraph, and telephone networks established by CBS facilitated coordination for Pacific operations through communication stations. Navigation aids like radio direction finders, radar installations, and control towers ensured the safe passage of aircraft and vessels. Ammunition bunkers safeguarded explosives from environmental hazards, mishaps, and enemy attacks. Water supply systems delivered fresh water to bases situated on tropical islands where potable water was scarce or contaminated. This intricate infrastructure was constructed under wartime constraints with ongoing deadlines and persistent shortages of materials. When contrasted against Japanese construction capabilities and methodologies, the magnitude of CB construction efforts becomes even more remarkable. As previously mentioned, Japanese construction units, known as setsai, predominantly relied on manual labor. A closer look at their practices highlights a significant productivity disparity. Typically, Japanese work teams comprised large groups of unskilled laborers overseen by a small number of skilled workers and military personnel. These labor forces, largely comprising Korean and Taiwanese conscripts, utilized basic hand tools in harsh conditions for extended periods. Tools such as shovels, picks, axes, and wheelbarrows were the primary equipment used. Despite long hours and strenuous efforts, progress was slow. Tasks that American bulldozers could complete within a few hours often took Japanese labor teams days or weeks to finish. While Japanese construction methods had certain advantages, they also faced critical limitations in productivity. For instance, Japanese engineers excelled at creatively utilizing locally available materials. Coconut log structures, though susceptible to heavy weaponry, were constructed from readily accessible resources and did not necessitate specialized equipment. Additionally, the Japanese became adept at building defensive positions using natural materials. Tunnels and cave modifications created formidable defenses, but were mostly accomplished manually. However, these strengths could not compensate for the fundamental disadvantage in productivity compared to American construction methods. Projects that demanded significant earthwork proceeded much more slowly when relying on manual labor compared to using mechanized tools. Road construction at a practical pace necessitated the use of bulldozers and graders, while airfield development within reasonable timeframes required heavy machinery. Building port facilities called for pile drivers, cranes, and excavators. The lack of proper equipment left Japanese forces unable to finish their construction projects before American offensives could overwhelm them. Captured documents show that Japanese officers and engineers were well aware of this disparity and repeatedly requested heavy construction machines from higher command. However, these requests often went unmet due to the scarcity of such equipment. However, Japan's industrial output was primarily focused on producing combat weaponry, leaving construction machinery at the bottom of the priority list despite growing strategic needs. In response to the shortage, some Japanese units tried innovative approaches. When captured equipment was available, it was utilized, although American forces typically did not leave behind functional bulldozers or other heavy machines when they withdrew or redeployed. Additionally, makeshift equipment was assembled from salvaged parts with mixed results. Yet, these efforts failed to close the productivity gap sufficiently to make a strategic difference. The productivity disparity had cascading effects on the campaign. American forces advanced more quickly because they could construct necessary infrastructure faster. This rapid advancement gave Japanese forces less time to prepare for subsequent defensive positions, resulting in weaker defenses and quicker American victories. Quicker victories sped up the overall pace of the campaign. This cycle intensified. Japanese strategists acknowledged these trends, but were unable to devise effective countermeasures. Their defensive doctrine shifted towards inflicting maximum casualties on American forces, even as ultimate defeat became unavoidable. Tactics such as underground fortifications, tunnel warfare, and suicidal last stands aimed to make American victories costly enough to potentially influence U.S. political resolve. While these strategies increased American losses, they could not prevent an American triumph when the United States systematically achieved overwhelming material superiority at each objective. The final year of the war saw the peak in scale and sophistication of construction battalion (CB) work. As American forces neared the Japanese home islands, bases became larger and more intricate. Okinawa, captured in June 1945 after 3 months of fierce fighting, was swiftly transformed into a massive staging base for the planned invasion of Japan. CB construction on Okinawa progressed even as combat continued in the northern part of the island. Within weeks of securing the island, multiple airfield complexes, extensive port facilities, immense supply depots, and comprehensive base infrastructure were established. The planned Operation Downfall invasion would have tested American CB capabilities to their limits. Planning documents anticipated construction operations on an even larger scale than anything previously attempted. Nevertheless, this planning highlighted how crucial construction skills had become to U.S. strategic thinking. Victory was not just about defeating Japanese forces militarily, but also rapidly establishing the infrastructure needed for sustained operations and eventual occupation. The atomic bomb attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, which directly led to Japan's surrender, were launched from Tinian Island, specifically from North Field, a base constructed by CBs and Army engineers. The bombers that carried these weapons took off from runways that had been virgin jungle just 1 year earlier. The transformation of Tinian from an uninhabited island to a functional strategic bomber base, capable of launching atomic missions in roughly 12 months, exemplified the critical role of American construction capabilities throughout the Pacific War. None of this rapid infrastructure development would have been possible without bulldozers and other heavy machinery. These machines transformed pristine jungles into functional bases and turned remote Pacific islands into fully operational military installations at a pace that dramatically altered the strategic dynamics of the island-hopping campaign. The effectiveness of this strategy hinged in part on the rapid construction capabilities provided by CB battalions equipped with bulldozers, enabling American forces to circumvent heavily fortified Japanese positions by rapidly capturing and developing less well-defended islands into key forward bases. This approach proved highly effective because CB units could establish complete airfields and port facilities much faster than the Japanese could reinforce garrisons or mount large-scale counterattacks. Bulldozers were instrumental in making the island-hopping strategy logistically feasible as an operational plan. For instance, following the intense fighting at Tarawa in November 1943, a partially completed Japanese airfield was made fully operational within just 15 hours. Soon after, Tarawa served as a forward base supporting operations in the Marshall Islands. Similarly, shortly after Saipan's capture in July 1944, following 3 weeks of fierce combat, Asto Airfield became operational within 4 days. Within weeks, Saipan was home to squadrons of B-29 strategic bombers conducting long-range strikes against targets throughout the Philippines and eventually Japan itself. The transition from initial combat to fully operational strategic bomber base took mere weeks instead of months or years typically required for traditional military construction projects. After Tinian's capture in August 1944, construction battalion units, CBU, rapidly built expansive airfield complexes. Northfield became fully operational by February 1945, while Westfield achieved full operational status a month later. CBS built 6 distinct runways, each 500 feet long, specifically tailored for B-29 Superfortress aircraft operations. From these Tinian airfields, the atomic bomb missions targeting Hiroshima and Nagasaki were launched in August 1945. The entire process from capturing the atomic missions took about 1 year. This feat would have been impossible without the use of bulldozers and rapid construction methods. The Japanese failed to develop effective countermeasures against American construction capabilities. Some Japanese intelligence officers tried to identify specific technical modifications that might explain the enhanced performance of American equipment, looking for changes in combat aircraft or other weaponry. However, the real decisive factor was not in combat hardware, but in construction machinery. Bulldozers provided America with a significant logistical advantage that superior tactical strategies alone could not match. After World War II ended, surplus military bulldozers flooded civilian markets worldwide. Many Day AR series machines originally manufactured for military purposes between 1945 were later utilized in post-war reconstruction efforts. Some of these machines were even sent to Japan as part of American occupation and rebuilding initiatives. The same bulldozers that played a crucial role in defeating Imperial Japan subsequently aided in the country's reconstruction after its defeat. Many individual machines produced early in the 1940s continued to be operational for decades in various civilian applications following the war. The lessons learned from the Pacific War's use of bulldozers extend far beyond the specific equipment or particular campaigns. The fundamental lesson is that modern industrial warfare is predominantly determined by industrial and logistical capacity rather than solely by combat effectiveness or tactical genius. Victory consistently favors nations and alliances capable of producing more equipment, transporting it to operational areas efficiently, maintaining it under challenging conditions, and replacing losses faster than their adversaries. This principle applied to bulldozers during the Pacific War and remains relevant in military operations across any era. Japanese strategic planners were well aware of this reality before the war began. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who orchestrated the attack on Pearl Harbor and commanded Japan's combined fleet, had spent considerable time studying at Harvard University and serving as a naval attaché in Washington during the 1920s. He possessed an intimate understanding of America's industrial might. Yamamoto consistently advocated against engaging in war with the United States because he recognized that Japan could not sustain a prolonged conflict given the overwhelming industrial capacity of its adversary. His apprehensions about rousing American industrial potential were well-founded. The bulldozers served as a testament to his strategic foresight. They exemplified just one category among numerous others, where America's production capabilities vastly outstripped those of Japan in terms of scale and efficiency. This imbalance was evident across various sectors, including ships, aircraft, vehicles, weapons, ammunition, and more. Bulldozers were especially noticeable on contested islands, where both American forces and Japanese defenders could witness the stark productivity gap firsthand. These machines not only underscored the disparity, but also profoundly influenced American military culture and public perception of their war effort. Construction battalion CBs gained widespread recognition within society, with films like The Fighting CBs bringing these stories to a broad audience. Images of bulldozers at work in the Pacific theaters frequently appeared in military publications, newsreels, newspapers, and recruitment materials. The bulldozer emerged as an enduring symbol of American industrial capability, practical problem-solving, and relentless determination in overcoming challenges. This cultural significance extended beyond wartime into post-war development. Many veterans who operated these machines during combat zones returned home with valuable skills that they applied to civilian construction industries. Numerous individuals contributed significantly to the growth of America's infrastructure. The extensive interstate highway system developed in the 1950s and 1960s relied heavily on techniques, equipment, methods, and organizational structures honed during World War II. Bulldozers continued to play a pivotal role in both military and civilian construction endeavors. Caterpillar continues to manufacture the D8 model in extensively updated versions today. Today's D8 models come with turbocharged diesel engines, advanced computer controls, GPS navigation systems, and intricate hydraulic mechanisms. The current operating weight surpasses 80,000 pounds, while engine power exceeds 360 horsepower, yet the core design concept remains largely unchanged since the 1940s. These heavy tractors are equipped with robust steel blades designed for efficient earth-moving in challenging conditions. World War II-era Caterpillar D8 bulldozers are preserved as historical artifacts in various museums around the world. At Port Hueneme, California, the United States Navy Seabee Museum showcases multiple examples of construction equipment that played a crucial role during Pacific War operations. Similar exhibits can be found at other military and industrial museums. These meticulously maintained machines serve as tangible links to wartime history, highlighting the significant contribution made by construction machinery in securing victory. The strategic insights gleaned from their use continue to influence modern military planning and operations. Today's armed forces still rely heavily on robust logistics capabilities and swift construction capacity. Contemporary engineering units, construction battalions, and civil affairs teams perform functions remarkably similar to those of World War II ACBS construction battalions. While the equipment is now far more technologically advanced, the foundational principles remain largely unchanged. The capability to swiftly establish essential infrastructure in contested or hostile environments offers a decisive operational advantage in any conflict. During the Pacific War, bulldozers exemplified these principles with remarkable clarity. They demonstrated that victory hinges not only on combat prowess, but also on industrial might and logistical efficiency applied systematically. Wars are ultimately won by factories, producing vast quantities of equipment, robust supply chains moving critical supplies forward, and rapid transformation of available resources into operational capabilities faster than opponents can respond. Fleet Admiral William Halsey recognized this fact fully when he deliberately placed bulldozers fourth among all weapons and tools that secured the Pacific victory. These machines were not primarily used for direct combat, but enabled American forces to operate more effectively in every domain by building airfield bases, road networks, and essential infrastructure. Without the necessary construction capabilities, the island-hopping campaign would have been logistically unfeasible to carry out successfully. This is how wars are actually won in conflicts of the industrial age. It's not solely due to single dramatic battles, although individual battles certainly play a crucial role. Nor is it exclusively because of remarkable acts of heroism by individuals, though personal courage is always significant. Wars are ultimately decided by comprehensive industrial systems capable of producing adequate equipment, transporting it where needed strategically and tactically, maintaining it effectively under challenging conditions, and replacing losses faster than the enemy can cause damage. At a tactical level, they symbolized American industrial might translated into immediate operational effectiveness. They demonstrated construction speeds that Japanese forces could not match using their available methods and resources. These machines represented the unglamorous yet ultimately decisive task of building critical infrastructure necessary for sustained military victory. They also highlighted the thousands of CBS who operated them professionally, fought courageously when needed, and systematically constructed the network of forward bases essential for final victory in the Pacific War. If you found this story engaging, please like this video. Subscribe to stay informed about more historical narratives. Each one uncovers how wars are actually won. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for recognizing that history includes not only dramatic battles and individual heroes, but also machinery, logistics, and the industrial capacity that ultimately determines victory.